I experienced anger, care, rage, total darkness, total light, infinite light, total fearlessness, and total love. It was a journey that I had no control of at all. On the outside, people were worried, concerned, fearful, but on the inside, I was being shown something that nobody ever could show. We hear stories all of our lives about miracles that happen to people unexplained. We hear about people that die on operating tables and they have a vision of heaven or even visions of hell. What these things have in common to what happened to me is you have to understand there is no pattern to who it picks, where it happens, what time it happens, why it happens to these people, just like this happened to me. And the common things that happen out of it in most cases is a spiritual change in their life. Is something that they know that they're going to sound like the madman, but they can't not talk about it. And the wind blew, and it blew it away, and all of humanity was free of their burdens. When I talk about these things, these weren't me. It never changed me except for at the end when it changed me for 100,000 times better person.
The power you seek lies within you, as we are each infinite beings living a human experience. The truth of who and what we are has been hidden from us until now. Awaken, my friends, to this new reality that we are in fact creating everything through the power and the gift of our wonderful imagination. Join me as I unlock the secrets of our past and reveal the truth that has been clouded in this veil we call life. What reality will you choose to create today? The choice is yours. Welcome, my friends, to My Reality Practice. Hey everyone, it's Joey from the Reality Practice Network. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned after the show and find out how you can work one-on-one with your show host as they guide you through this process of ascension. Until then, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Reality Practice Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Kramer, and today's guest is Steve Pierce. Steve is a true inspiration to us all as we're each experiencing this great awakening to our divine truth. Having known Steve now going on almost 8 years, it's been a pleasure to watch his evolution and to personally watch his spiritual growth and connection explode over the past couple years. He's got an incredible story and an incredible out-of-body type experience he went through last year, and I can't wait for him to share that story with you. So without further delay, let's welcome Steve Pierce to the show. Welcome. How are you doing today, Steve?
Joey, I'm doing great. I've been preparing for this all day. It's the first interview I've ever done, and I was like, oh, what the heck? I'm just going to go for it. I've got to tell you that I'm really honored to be on your podcast. I see so many great influencers that inspire me so much, that I learn so much from Brian Scott and your Liliana DeCruz and all of the others. So it's a real honor to be on here sharing my own story with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure and it's an honor myself to have you on the show, because I know what you've gone through. I know what your experience and journey has been over the last couple of years. And that's really why I wanted to have you on the show, so you could share that journey with the viewers, because so many of us are going through the same thing, literally identically to what you experienced, that just so many people are afraid to share, what's happened to them. They're afraid that they're going to be ridiculed or mocked for having this spiritual awakening, this divine intervention, so to say. But I've been wanting to have you on the show now since all of this happened to you last year. And I'm glad we waited until now, because now I have a platform for you to really share this journey you've been on. And I think it's going to be inspiring, not just to the people you mentioned, that, the influencers and people that we all like to follow and learn from, but I think this can be a real opportunity for all of us out there, regardless of if you're just starting this spiritual process or if it's happened to you years ago. I think we can all take a little bit of truth from what you've gone through and apply that to the wisdom we're all learning to evolve into. So let's just start right off. Give us let's start off and tell everybody kind of how we know each other. Steve is my father-in-law. So when I say I've been able to experience his journey, I've gotten to be right there firsthand and watch it all. But we've known each other now almost 8 years, and I'm married to your amazing daughter, April. So that's kind of full disclosure there as far as how we know each other and how our paths have really come together. And I think everything happens for a reason. Everything's divine intervention, and our time coming together when we did and experiencing what we've experienced is all just kind of part of this bigger plan. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, there was, when I met you and everything, you were my number 2 son-in-law, because Daniel was my other son-in-law was there first. But you're always number 1 also. But the thing about it is there was nothing ever coming out of this that I expected for anything like what happened to me happened. But in the end of the day, when we're looking at where we are today, there's no such thing as a coincidence. It's the things that we connect together in our lives happen sometimes so many years ahead of time that set you on a certain course that it just eventually falls in place.
Yeah, I love that. That's something I think we all struggle with at times, is the timing of that divine intervention, the timing of how things happen. While we met 7, 8 years ago, we've been building up to this. We didn't know why each of us would play a role in each other's lives, but we can't always judge or worry about that timeline. It happens when it's supposed to happen, even if I met you years ago. And this goes the same for everybody, I think, out there. People come into our lives. We may not always know why they're coming in at the time they are, but when the time is right, the truth of what's going on kind of reveals itself to you. So let's go back to where did you come from? Let's get just a brief kind of overview of who Steve was prior to this awakening that you had.
I'm super happy to tell you about this. I grew up in a little, medium-sized town of Salina, Kansas. And it is the most awesome city that you could ever go to. And I'm not being prejudiced. Yes, I am. But in this little town I grew up in, I had 9 brothers and sisters, and we were raised in a Christian home. And in this town I lived in, I had uncles and aunts and cousins, and they lived in the same town or they lived in the rural areas close by, and they were all just awesome. Then I moved when I was 14 and really just getting started in life. I moved to a small farming community, and nothing against farming communities, but it was a culture shock to me. And then when I turned 17, my parents moved to Kansas City, Missouri. And So to go backtrack on that, that's just the brief history of how I got there. The way I have interacted with life all of my life has been very flexible. I was 4'9" when I was the smallest kid in school all the way through school. 4'9" when I started my senior year. I'm 5'9" now, and there's an opportunity for bullies when it comes to those kind of things. And instead of allowing them to bully me, I went ahead and just laughed at myself what they were saying about me. You're a little shrimp. I'd say, yeah, I sure am, and that's kind of how I've handled things through my life. So I've never carried a lot of burden.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
you've had a lot of compassion in your life. You've never really allowed the things that would affect a lot of people to, affect you. You've always been, ever
yes,
since
that's
I've known
how
you, you've been like a really happy-go-lucky type of person. You've
I
enjoyed
just
your
let,
life, right?
I've always just let, yeah, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
Um, that's like when I moved to Kansas City. I wasn't freaking about. I was in my senior year and uh, wasn't interested in going to the war. It was 1973, and the Vietnam War uh, made an impression on me. I'll just say that. And my parents didn't have enough money to send me to college, so I had no idea what I was going to do. And I've got a saying that to be lucky takes skill, and I can prove it. When I came here, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was in my senior year of high school. I was paying attention to the kids that were dressed nice and come in and stuff like that. Not that I idolized them. I just thought, you know, I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, but I listened to them, and some of these students were coming in after a Christmas vacation saying they flew down to Florida and went to Disney World and all this. And I found out that the parents worked at Trans World Airlines and they got to fly free. So I just decided, well, I'm going to get a job there. So I went ahead and applied for a job at the cafeteria in their administration building where they hired people. And I went over there and pestered them until they hired me. So was that luck or was it skill?
Yeah,
So
you've this story, I've heard it many times, but for those who haven't heard it yet, yeah, Steve, he's been manifesting his reality all of his life without even knowing, probably consciously, that you've been doing it, that you were in control of it, but you kind of you would say it wasn't luck. You took the action, you found something you wanted. You wanted to work at TWA because you wanted to travel. So you set your sights on it. You went out and you took action to make it happen. So where did that start? Where did you enter at? And where did you progress to? How did you get to the position you were in? Because this is a great manifestation story.
as far as what specifically were you wondering about?
Yeah. Go into detail. Like you started off, cleaning airplanes, and you went in every single day, to the hiring office and put in your resume and so on and so forth. And at the end, you finally got the job that you wanted, but it
Yeah,
came
that's
with
what I.
persistence and you just kept fighting,
Yeah,
pushing.
it was. It was to be brief. When I worked at that cafeteria, you only had to walk about 100 yards. This was a huge building. This was all of Trans World Airlines administration of the flights, the tickets, and back then they had a huge computer room that was the size of, I would say, a quarter of a football field. That's how long ago this was.
Right.
Okay, and the lady that did the hiring, I would go over there maybe once every 2 weeks. I'd just say, "Are there any openings?" And she told me that there's a freeze, but I'd still go in there and I'd just talk to her once in a while. How you doing? Stuff like that. Any openings? So one day I went in there and I said, are there any openings? And she said, here, I've got something for you. And she said, there's an interview at a building over by the airport for working in the kitchen, which was cleaning off the plates and running through the dishwasher. Okay. And she said,
Entry level, at that point in time,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
Right.
Definitely. And I've always said, if a door opens, don't try to go through it. Just get your foot in. You know, don't
Love it. Yeah.
don't try to go through. Just get a foot in there. That's all you got to have. So anyway, she said the interview's in a half hour. Can you go? Well, here I am at work, and I thought I'm not going to miss this opportunity. And so I went and told my boss. I said, I've got to go for this interview. And he said, I can't give you the time off. And I said, I'm sorry, and I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to go. So he terminated me.
Wow.
And I went over there with full confidence. I was talking to my soon to hire me boss. And in the interview, well, I won't go into that because we're going to go too long. Anyway, I got the job. I fiddled around in it and went to janitor, and then I was cleaning aircraft, and I got laid off. Anyway, in the long run, I ended up working uh, up to the highest pay I could make. I got my airframe power plant and FCC radio license to make sure I was qualified in everything that I could have done, and so forth. And I made it a 30-year career.
Wow.
And got to do some nice flying too.
That's amazing. Yeah, it goes to say you have that vision, you have that dream, that desire that you want. You set the wheels in motion. You never accepted no. And you went through courageously. You went through without fear, even though you lost your job to go to the first interview. You were fearless. You had that confidence within you that all's going to be good. I'm going to get this job, and the rest is history. 30 years later,
Right.
you retire. So that story in and of itself is amazing. But what I really now want to dive into is the reason I had you on the show, is this spiritual awakening that you had in this out of body type experience that you had. Let's first just kind of rewind a little bit though, and get a foundation of where you started as far as spirituality, because you were raised religious, you were raised in the Christian faith, and your whole family was. So you were very devout. And I believe that a lot of what you learned all those years through the religion really outlined where you're at now, because we have so many discussions, about different parts of the Bible and different things that are said in there and how they relate to the awakening we're all experiencing. So, where were you prior to your awakening as far as religion was concerned?
I grew up in a family of, like I said, there were 10 of us kids and my parents. And if you ever were around any of my family when we were children, we were always respectful. We were always kind. My parents raised us not to have a church conscience, but to have a inner conscience. They weren't mystics. They were church-going, God-loving people. But when it came time to tell me you've overstated your case, you knew you'd overstated your case. If you were arguing with them or if you're doing something wrong. So my whole family are very strong Christians, and they're just the most wonderful people in the world. Me, I was the third from the oldest, and I was the one that was the rebel, you know, the one that decided enough is enough when uh, it comes time to decide my own decisions. And that came in around the 8th grade. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But I was the one that decided I wanted to jump over the fence because the grass looked a lot greener. Okay, and it was an adventure. I'd never, I'd never turn around and go back and say, "Whoops, I don't want to jump that fence anymore." The thing is about it is you can jump on another side of the fence by the decisions you make in your life and everything. But when you jump over the other side of the fence, it's going to have weeds and brambles and thorns, just like the fence you were on the other side. So it was great. I'm glad I did it. I would never take it back. I love it. I still love it today. And I don't miss that I left before, but I picked up all the good things I learned and carried them over the fence with me. Pack your bag before you go.
I love, you said that your family really raised you while they were Christian and religious. It sounds like they really took the best aspects, the best principles of the religion, as opposed to following it to a T like so many people do. They took the best parts of it, the love, the respecting one another, the love thy neighbor type attitude, love one another. So I love that part of that.
Do you want to hear some? Do you want to hear something that's pretty amazing to me?
Sure.
My mom and dad raised us in the Catholic Church, and they were very devout Catholics. But when every one of us children decided to explore other religions, they never said a word.
Wow.
They never laid guilt. They never anything. They accepted who we are for who we are. And every single one of my brothers and sisters and myself are not Catholics now. Now let me be sure you understand. This is not a knock on the Catholic Church. This is what the freedom my parents gave us.
That free will to choose. They set you on the path with the principles you needed to know, but they didn't say my way is the only way. They allowed you to go find your own way, which really has led us to where you're at today. And the fact that you're on this show, let's talk about what happened in the spring of 2021, just right at a year ago, literally, is when you experienced this shift into your true awakening. And it kind of lasted for a couple months and culminated with this out-of-body experience, or I don't know what you like to call it, but for all intents and purposes, we'll just say it was an out-of-body experience that you had. And I think it really happened as you were discovering this power to manifest. You were creating, you'd call me and you'd tell me about all these things you were creating and imagining into existence. And I could relate with you because it was very similar to what I was doing in the spring of 2020 when I was manifesting and imagining all of these things, and they were literally playing themselves out almost instantly in some cases. But just like you, I had an experience as well, because I kind of built up, I started tapping into this power of manifestation that I don't think either of us understood as we were going through it. But in the process, it allowed darker, that negative energy to come in and try to influence us. And I was attacked spiritually, and I've told you about it and I've shared before, but it was a lot of similarities in what happened to you. You started playing around and discovering this power you had. But I think where we all go a little astray at the very beginning is we don't realize the power that we truly have and how to protect ourselves from that power. We start playing with it unconsciously. And before you know it, it kind of invites those negative energies that want to control that power, that want to manipulate it. It kind of opens the door for them, and we don't realize it. And that's kind of when your out of body experience, that attack more or less happened to you. So would you like to tell your story, share this, spring of 2022, how did this play out and what came of it?
Well, I think it's important to lay down the foundation of the things that occurred before I actually uh, had this transformation, let's call it. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to try to use layman's terms. Um, about 3 months before uh, June 6th, 7th, and 8th, so probably back in March or April, you and I were over at your house, and I know you'll remember this. And Kelsey, my wife, and my daughter, your wife, April, went out to do some shopping or whatever they do, you know. And we sat in your garage, and you were telling me all about this and everything. We sat there for 3 hours, and I just sat and listened to you because I've never been a judgmental person. If I can catch myself, let's put it this way. Okay, everybody slips up, and I'm the guy who knows wrong more often than I do know right. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to listen with an open mind, and you were explaining about um, the vision you had, and then you took me up and you showed me your whiteboard with just all of this funnel of stuff that you were going to be getting accomplished through the whole deal. And you even started kind of trying to explain to me about your ranch, but I thought that was a French ranch dressing or something. But anyway, I was just like, okay, that's a little far out there. But I listened to what you had to say. I understood what you were saying and what you were willing, trying to achieve, and I think that helped you because it's hard to find people to talk to when you have those kind of
Experiences and
things going
visions.
on.
Absolutely. Yes. We're very much, we feel very much alone, but at the end of the day, we're not. We just always feel that way. We feel isolated. So yeah, go on.
Right. So the major part of the event happened on June 6th, 7th, and 8th. That's when I was admitted to the hospital.
Right.
Okay.
And prior
So
to that, you had
prior,
been manifest. What sort of things were you manifesting? Because you were calling me, telling me all about it. Like, you're not going to believe what I just did here. And oh my God, I had a meditation on this and then this happened. So kind of share with people what happened before the event.
well, what happened was I started, my mind elevated its order of being able to manage things going on around me. Uh, this is well witnessed by especially my wife. At that time, we were buying and selling a house, and anytime I was having to do all of the getting the inspections and the banks and the paperwork and going here to sign documents, doing this, doing that, and all that rigmarole you have when you're selling a house. And then all of a sudden, on top of that, I'm refinishing the antique wood furniture, wood furniture to its original condition, and taking so much care and time to do that. I met a lady that was selling antiques that didn't know how to market them or what they were worth, so I started helping her do that. I started working on a patent for an invention, and for me to describe it in some kind of terminology that people could understand, it was like I was living my life, juggling 3 balls and not doing a good job of it, dropping them every once in a while. And all of a sudden I had 8 balls in the air and I'm not missing. It was like
Yes.
watching a intergalactic game of Tetris that's coming down at high speed, and I'm putting every block into the exact place it needs to be. And this was running up for 30 days
Right.
to
Yeah,
this.
I remember that, everything was falling into place. And this was around the time you'd begun meditating. You'd really begun trying to tap into what this energy was, what the source was. And the more you were doing it, the more you were seeing these things kind of play themselves out in exactly the order that they needed to be played out, or you
Yeah, it
envisioned
was,
them, and you were becoming amazed, like, oh my God, this is, how am I juggling all this without dropping any of it? And it was insane and incredible to watch. You
and then,
managing all of this. It was like you were in multiple dimensions, multiple timelines, just like running them all simultaneously. And it was really cool to watch.
I don't know if it was, you know, identifying whether there are multiple timelines or what it is. I just knew that something was going on, and I was amazed at myself. But but throughout all of the ordeal, there was no way for me to stop it. I couldn't say, okay, I'm just going to stop doing this. There was no way for me to do it. I didn't have the thought in my mind, I guess I should say. Well, on the outside, the people I know, my family, you, April, my wife, I've been married to her for 45 years. She's the most blessed woman I've ever known. I mean,
Yes,
I'll
she's an
smile real,
amazing woman to put up with
I'll,
you all these years.
yeah. And she was there. She was singing. Everybody was singing. I went up to my brother-in-law, and all of a sudden, another thing I developed in this, I could look into some people's faces, and I could see a burden or torment that was weighing down on their lives. And I could look at another and see a shiny face and knew that they were somehow connected uh, internally and at peace with themselves. That type of thing. So,
Something awoken in you to where you could start seeing the auras, is what we call that. You could see their energetic signature more or less, and you were able to, were they vibrating positive? Were they vibrating negative? And you really, as an empath, that affects us more, when we start to understand and recognize it. So,
yeah. So, kind of an interesting story is, one night I went up to my brother. We were up. I was up at my brother-in-law's place, and he was playing. He's got a band, and he was playing in his bar he built, and listened to the band play and so forth. And there was a guy that, whenever he drinks, he was a mean and bitter drunk, and he was an out of control. And that night he was, and I could see it, see his aura. And when the band finished up and he started to get up, he fell down, and I went over to help him up. And he turned and looked at me with just evil in his eyes and shoved me off. And he said, I can get up myself. And I grabbed a hold of his collar and I said, you need to calm down. And his eyes instantly changed, and he calmed down. Well, in the meantime, my brother-in-law are standing there, and band members are standing there, and they know me as Meek and Mild Steve. And all of a sudden, they don't see what's going on inside of me, they just look at Steve and go, what the heck? What the heck is
Who's
wrong with
this
this
new
guy?
Steve?
You know,
Right.
and Ben is my wife, Kelsey's brother. So he calls her and he says, man, Steve's out of control. And Kelsey was agreeing with it. She's going, we don't know what's going on with it.
Hmm. And this was building up to the 3 days in June when you had this experience,
Yes.
this
And
transition. So what started off? What was that transition that you went through? How did that progress?
well, what triggered it was all of a sudden, all of these balls I was juggling carried a lot of stress with it. You know, not, I was handling, I was amazed, but the stress was sitting back here somewhere waiting to get out. Okay. So the day that we signed the papers on the house we sold and the house we bought, it all came rushing out. And I experienced anger, care. I wrote some of these down, just a few. Rage, total darkness, total light, infinite light, total fearlessness, and total love. It was a journey that I had no control of at all. Okay. On the outside, people were worried, concerned, fearful,
Right.
but on the inside, I was being shown something that nobody ever could show. So here's where all of my friends, so I'm going to have to just kind of do a checkpoint here.
Right.
Here's where
just walk us through it however you need to.
Well, here's where anybody that's listening to this that is family that I haven't told anything to about this. We hear stories all of our lives about miracles that happen to people unexplained. We hear about people that die on operating tables and they have a vision of heaven or even visions of hell. We have people that are rescued miraculously out of an unknown hand that shoves them out of the middle of the sea on the shore type of thing. Okay. But what these things have in common to what happened to me is you have to understand there is no pattern to who it picks, where it happens, what time it happens, why it happens to these people, just like this happened to me. And the common things that happen out of it in most cases is a spiritual change in their life, is something that they know that they're going to sound like the madman, but they can't not talk about it. And so when I talk about these things, these weren't me. It never changed me except for at the end when it changed me for 100,000 times better person internally. But I'll tell you one event that I saw, okay? And it really sticks out for me. And people that are enlightened and employ meditation as a method to reach a higher version of themselves or whatever will understand this, but I'll try to illustrate it as simply as I possibly can. I was standing like on the edge of a bluff, and I looked out, and all I saw was like a thick, heavy blanket black blanket. And I'm looking at this, and I can't figure out what I'm seeing, you know. And then I was told that this is humanity under their burdens, not their sin. Sin is part of a burden, but also under their mistakes that they accidentally made. The last word that was said that cut off a friendship, the mourners, the heartbroken, under the weight of this blanket. And I looked up, and there was a cloud, a cumulus cloud with the shadows and the bright lights and everything, and there was a white light behind it. And all of a sudden, this cloud blew wind, and this dark blanket turned into a black veil, as thin and light as air. And the wind blew, and it blew it away, and all of humanity was free of their burdens.
No, I remember, I'm having discussions with you during these 3 days, which I believe you said earlier, and I agree with you, there are no coincidences. This 3-day period you went through, I think there was a purpose that it was 3 days, because who else had 3 days, a 3-day period, and then had a resurrection? I think from what I feel and believe, you were experiencing that resurrection of the Christ power within you, and it was revealing itself, but it was revealing a lot of the darkness as well. We have to see the dark before there can be light. And I feel like in what you went through, you entered into that darkness. You had to see it. You had to feel it. You had to experience it in order to resurrect on that 3rd day into the light and the being that you are now. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. The thing about it is, that sounds like a crazy story to people, but I can't sit here and say it didn't happen, because it did. And with my family experiencing, seeing what I was going through, everybody knew that, and everybody I've talked to has said it wasn't you, because it would never be you.
Right.
Anyway, so to kind of continue on down the road a little bit, I think now I meditate and regularly, and my meditations are providing answers to what I went through, and that it's come up with some really profound things. And what I basically got out of that is that there's a transformation in works around the world. If you look at the world, I mean, I try not to pay attention to the newspapers very much, you see things. Okay. So I spent a little time looking at the news yesterday and so forth. And, it's no different than it was for the Romans or anybody else. Doom, gloom, and everything else. There's one major difference. We finally arrived at the place in technology that people with evil intentions have the ability to totally eradicate everything on this earth. So that's what's different over those years. But what's happening on the other end is the prophecies of fulfillment, and the harvest is ready. So there's an awakening, a great awakening going on in the world, which I didn't know about until after this was over. Started to finding, where am I going to talk about this thing that happened to me, and realize that there's an awakening of people that no matter where they come from, what path they got there from, or anything, they're all focused on the love of mankind. And that's what the wind blowing across the veil is, the love we all as people need to have for each other, and we can change what's going on.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, without going too much more into as because like I said, I saw good, I saw bad, you know. And when I got to tell you kind of a funny story, okay? So I ended up, this kind of how I shrugged things off. So I ended up in an ambulance, and they were taking me to a hospital. And it's funny, my wife and I were talking about this morning, and when I got in that ambulance, what I was seeing, I was in a panel van like somebody uses to paint houses with, and maybe loans it out to the hospital in the evenings. And I'm laying on this, like, you know that Olympic sport, the luge, the sleds?
Yes.
Like, you're laying down and it's shaking and blah, blah, blah. Like a luge with a cushion on it. And I'm looking around and I'm just seeing a panel van, and there's these vents over it, and I'm laying there in a tank top and shorts, jean shorts, and these vents are like 3 inches around. They're blowing ice cold air down on me, full blast. And I look up, and there's a guy sitting there with a dirty polo shirt on, laying on his phone, not doing vital checks, not doing nothing. Anyway, now my wife tells me this morning, which I had never asked her before. She said, "No, you were in a state of the art ambulance." I'm going, "Are you kidding me?"
Oh, I remember.
Really, seriously.
You told me all about it. You were surrounded by angels in that ambulance. You told me when we got to the hospital that you were looking out and you were seeing all these angels, or who was it you were seeing that were there?
No,
what happened
was when I was getting ready to get strapped in the van, I looked at the van and the door opened, and there were these, like, on the NFL where they show the football player with the metal gear all over the animation. They looked like that. And they put me in the ambulance, and they put like a protective device around me, and it happened that quick, and then they went away. Like 4 squares came down, slapped me in, and
they were there to protect you.
Split second, and then shot away. And I'm going like, "Wow, I'm being protected here."
You had the true armor of God there at your side, literally.
I don't know. I guess so. So I mean, it has to be.
Yeah. Let me ask Steve, as we're getting about to an hour here. We got a little bit of time left, but let me ask you. You told me before you were shown glimpses of the new Earth, of where we're headed, of what the future looks like for humanity. And I've too have seen these. We've discussed this. We've talked about it. What were you shown in terms of the coming, I guess, ascension is what we would call it?
Well, if I had to, I was thinking about this the other day, because I've got so many messages and so many things that are prophetic and being fed to me, because when I meditate as a Christian meditator, meditationist. I do my meditations through the Trinity. God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of the, like I said, I don't know why it happened to me. I don't know how it happened. It hasn't changed me on the outside, except for I try to, my wife said I'm noticeably nicer once in a while. but I'm changing my outside because I struggled with a lot of things when I came out there. I mean, I ended up in the hospital because I had convulsions, and I ended up in the hospital. By the time I got to the hospital, I was at least 90% done. The convulsions kicked whatever it was out of me and went its own way. And after that, everything, like the lights were just like bright. And Joey, you remember that when I got out of the hospital, I was walking around telling people, have an awesome day, have a great day, love you, meeting people, talking to people, cashiers, telling everybody how great life is and everything like that. And it was I was just being poured into blessings. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I started doing some really deep meditations and getting the world away from myself to improve me and to listen. And one of the things that came, that if I had to relay a message, let's say, and I want to make sure I kind of make sure I pinpoint something. Just because I'm a Christian meditationist, there are many, many people that are awake throughout the world, millions of people, and it doesn't matter the path you got there. We're all focused on the same thing, and that's the love of the earth and the people without judgment.
And it all wraps back
So
around
if
to
I,
what we talked about when you were brought up with your parents, and they just taught you the fundamental principles of love and of respecting one another, respecting the earth, all of that, kind of came full
yeah,
circle again, didn't it?
yeah, and like the messages for those with ears to hear and uh, the minds to discern, and check it against whatever resources you want to, and anything I've said, if it's a challenge, I'm open to it. I can't deny what's happened to me. I'm not going to change the person I am because I'm good. But when we look at this earth, we're seeing that the time of the harvest is here. The wheat heads are full. And so we're collectively gathering this love that is eventually going to take the burden away. But the other thing, too, is we have a responsibility to the cosmos, to the universe, to God, we were given stewardship of this earth. A lot of people look back on the Garden of Eden and they focus on the sin, but they don't focus on the benefits. The benefit is we all got a free will, which which came as a part of it, but we also came with the burden of temptation. So, but our job as people on the earth is to respect what we have, regardless of whether you believe in the creator or not, and to love the person around you. But the other thing is there are forces that are trying to keep people under that burden blanket. And we have to be strong and we have to fight back with that same love and the boldness of what the Bible says is the what'd you call it? Say earlier, Joey, the armor of God.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the armor of God protecting
Because
us.
it's not all just teaching people about love; it's fighting against the forces that want to rob mankind of this. Once that happens, we're, like Brian Scott said in an interview he did with you, he said, we're in training. We're in training. We're waiting for the high vibration. We're waiting for the universal frequency and so forth. But as we're in training, we're also training to face those things that are holding mankind back. So our responsibility from a universal sense is this: if you can take care of this little planet, then you will be able to reap the rewards of eternity when that planet becomes again a part of the seamless eternity.
I love that. That's beautiful. You know, you went over a lot right there, and you know, I like to relate it to, you know, we're going through this great awakening indeed, and we're learning to overcome that negative influence, that lower density that's been holding humanity back. And it's only ourselves, in essence, that's holding us back because of that perception of free will, or the free will we have gives us that perception of those traumas, of the things that are holding people back, the self-limiting beliefs, because we don't know our true power. That's been hidden from us. And through your journey, you've discovered the true power. It lies inside of you, and that you have this ability to see and project out into the world what you really want. And what you're discovering, I think, is the more you project out with that light and that love, that positive energy, positive thoughts, you know, it's literally in real time creating this new earth that you were shown, that you envisioned. And it's kind of like the secret key, you know, that we just simply have to be aware of it and turn the key, unlock that door, and open up what's truly possible for us, right?
Yes, kind of my journey since has been really beneficial through the reality the reality networking and all the things
Reality
you're doing,
practice, yes.
because I mean, this only happened to me last June, and I'm an infant in this. I'm the sponge, you know, so I pick up, you know, I'm researching, you know, I'm doing research on the origin of Christian meditation post Constantine. And I hear some of your contributors talk about some of that stuff from back then, you know, so opportunities to glean information from other people is more. And then someday I want to be able to set up my own kind of whatever, but I'm 67 and I'll have to hire somebody to do all that. But, you know, like I said, it's just why it happened to me, how it happened to me, and everything. I can't explain it, you know. Do I wish it hadn't happened to me? A lot of parts of it I wish hadn't happened to me. But I have to, but they did, and I have to accept them, and I have to come full circle with it, and not look at the negative of it and draw the positives out of it. And,
Right. It was like you were like Neo, you know, in the Matrix, literally. You took the pill, you woke up, and now you can't be put back to sleep. Are there things that are unpleasant that now you are aware of that didn't exist before? Yes. I think that's all part of the process is, and you said it, you know, you're like a sponge now. I think once we awaken, once we realize that there's something more, it takes that little spark. But once it sparks that fire, it can't be put out. And you're just me, myself. I mean, I read 300 books in 2020 because once that spark was lit, and it's like, I had to find out more. I had to keep searching for the truth. And I think you're going through what so many of us are going through right now. You're a sponge. We're all sponges trying to absorb as much of this as we can to understand and put all the puzzle pieces together as to what our reality truly is versus what we've been led to believe for our entire lives for thousands of years. We're at the precipice of a new dawn. And you, like all of us, we're getting to enjoy this ride. We get to sit back and watch. The universe is watching us. We're the show.
Yeah,
we're the primetime show right now, Yeah,
it's like, quit looking down on people just because they're different than you. We both sin in the same bucket. I don't care how dark it is. I don't care how light it is. Black is black, no matter what. Or we all have transgressions, if you want to call them that. You call them whatever you want. There are things that we do. We make choices in our life, and we need to clean our own act up first, and not be judgmental on those that feel the way they do about certain things. And you have to, it's just like in the Lord's Prayer, it says, forgive my transgressions as I forgive those who have transgressed me. If you can't forgive, if you can't love your fellow man, how is he going to forgive you? Because it says, the same as I forgive those who trespass against me. You'll get this if you do this. You're making an agreement. I'm going to do my part. Please do your part. And if you ask and you believe, you shall receive. But focus on this part, and then this part will come.
Perfectly said. I think that's the perfect way to wrap up this interview, Steve. I appreciate it. It's time for one last question that I ask everybody before we close out. And since this show's all about creating your own reality, if I could snap my fingers right now and transport you into the reality you most desire, what would it be and why?
The reality I would most want to be transported into is the moment when total love, total forgiveness wipes out the iniquities of mankind.
Beautiful.
That moment.
That is beautiful. And I haven't heard that one. I hear a lot of answers, and I love that one. So thank you, Steve.
We're going to do it.
Oh.
We're all going to do it.
Oh, yes.
We're all going to do it. It's going to happen.
It can't be stopped at this point. It's just, we can't control the time of it. We just all have to unite collectively, project out that love, and it'll happen before we know it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Steve, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, truly enlightening. Your journey has been so familiar, yet unique, because everybody's journey is unique. So I really applaud you, your courage for sharing it, and continue to be a shining beacon of light for your family, for your friends, for those you know, and for those that you don't know. Hopefully this episode inspired them to share what's happened to them with the world, to tell their friends about what they've seen or what they've felt and where they're headed. So, I hope it's an inspiration to others. Thank you so much, Steve.
Well, it was a pleasure coming on. And again, thank you so much for all the people that contribute to your work. And they really help me learn. So thank you again.
You got it. And hey, thanks everybody for watching. So much appreciate you, the viewers. If you like this show, this episode, make sure give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you never miss an episode of the Reality Practice podcast. And until next time, my friends, stay blessed and remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today? Bye now.
Peace out.
See you, Steve. Hey everyone, it's Joey again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the show. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. We'd love to hear your comments too. And if you haven't already, please make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an episode from the Reality Practice Network. As I mentioned before the show, I wanted to extend an exclusive offer to you, the viewers of the Reality Practice Network. For all of you watching this video, you're undoubtedly experiencing an awakening and are searching for more explanation into the experiences you're having. Now is the time to explore who and what you truly are. For a limited time, you can now work one-on-one with your show host. Click the link in the description box below to start your journey, or learn more by going to myrealitypractice.com/ascension and let your ascension begin. And remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today?